So let's talk about a question that's at the heart of language teaching. How do we get our students to go from just recognizing words on a page to really truly understanding what they're reading? Let's dive in.
You know, it's a common idea that reading is the easier skill for language learners. And I mean, in some ways it is, right? They can control the pace, they can go back, they can reread, but that assumption can be a real trap. It makes us think that great reading lessons just happen. But the truth is, helping our students become strong, confident readers in a new language takes real, intentional, careful planning.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to start with the single biggest challenge our learners are up against. Then, we'll build up the foundations for effective reading, check out a really powerful 3-stage lesson framework, and wrap it all up with the core principles you can take right into your classroom.
All right, first up, let's get right to the heart of the problem. What is actually happening when someone who can already read tries to do it in a second language?
Okay, this right here is such a crucial concept. Our students, they don't need to learn how to read all over again. They've got those skills from their first language. The real challenge is that the transfer of those skills, well, it's not automatic. Something is getting in the way. It's blocking that transfer. So the big question is, what is it?
And you know what? The research on this is crystal clear. While grammar definitely matters, the single biggest barrier, the thing that stops a skilled L1 reader from being a skilled L2 reader, is vocabulary. As this foundational research shows, it's the words, the Lexis, that predict success more than anything else. I mean, it makes sense, right? If you don't know what most of the words mean, you just can't understand the text. So a huge part of our reading instruction needs to actually be vocabulary instruction.
Okay, so that leads us perfectly into the two pillars that really form the foundation of our reading instruction, building up that vocabulary and explicitly teaching reading strategies. But it's not just about the words. We can't assume that our learners are automatically using smart reading strategies, even if they're great readers in their first language. We have to teach these skills on purpose. That means showing them how to guess an author's purpose, how to scan a text for what they need without reading every single word, teaching them that rereading is a good thing, not a sign of weakness, and giving them practice summarizing the main points.
So if our goals are vocabulary and strategy, what's our number one tool in the classroom? Well, it's the text itself. Let's dig into why a text is so much more than just a bunch of words on a page.
I mean, think about your typical course book, right? How often does a new unit kick off with a reading text? Why is that? It's not just to give students some information. No way. That text is doing some serious heavy lifting, pedagogically speaking. And this shows you exactly why. A whole text provides this rich, natural context that a simple list of sentences could never, ever do. It gives students clues about what new words mean, it shows grammar being used in a real way, and it demonstrates how ideas are connected. The text isn't just the thing we're trying to understand, it's the vehicle for almost all of the language learning that comes after.
Okay, so how do we pull all of this together? The focus on vocabulary, the teaching of strategies, and using the text as our anchor into a lesson that actually works. Well, this is where a simple but super reliable framework comes into play. We can structure pretty much any reading lesson around these 3 stages. It's often called the PWP framework: pre-reading, while reading, and post-reading. Each of these stages has a really clear purpose, and together they guide students from preparing, to processing the text, and finally to producing their own language. Now, this first stage, pre-reading, is probably the most important of all, but it's the one we're most likely to rush through. This is where we set our students up for success before they even lay eyes on the text. We get them thinking about the topic, get them curious, give them a real reason to want to read, and, this is the big one, we pre-teach those key vocabulary words that we know could stop them in their tracks. Next up is the while reading stage, and this should never be just one single task. We want to approach it in layers. The very first time students read, it's just for gist, just to get the main idea. We tell them, don't worry about every single word. Then, on the second or third pass, we guide them back into the text to hunt for specific details, or to figure out what the author is implying. And finally, we get to the post-reading stage. This is where we move beyond just checking for comprehension. This is where our students really connect with the text. They can share their opinions on the content, we can zoom in and analyze some of the cool language from the text, and then they can use it as a launching pad for their own speaking or writing. The text becomes a model, a source of ideas, for real communication. Following that PWP framework will give you solid, effective lessons every time.
But how do we push our students to go from just being competent readers to becoming truly expert and even motivated readers?
I love this metaphor. Think of comprehension like an onion. Our tasks should help students peel back the layers one at a time. So we might start on the outside with a simple question like, who went to the store? Then we peel back a layer to do some analysis. Why did the author use the word dashed instead of ran? And finally, we get to the core, to inference. What does this story show us about what the character really cares about? See? Each step gets a little bit more challenging.
Now, beyond all the hard work we do in class, there's incredible power in what we call extensive reading, which is really just a fancy way of saying reading for pleasure. When we make time for students to just sit and read silently with books or articles that are easy for them, the benefits are massive. It's one of the best ways to grow vocabulary and reading speed naturally. And maybe most importantly, it can actually create a genuine love of reading.
And notice, I said silent reading. That old classroom practice of going around the room and having students take turns reading aloud, to be blunt, it's just not an effective way to build comprehension. All the focus goes to public performance and pronunciation, not to understanding the meaning. It might feel like a good way to keep everyone on task, but we really should avoid it as a primary reading activity. Silent reading is for understanding. Reading aloud is for something else entirely.
All right, we have covered a lot of ground. So when you sit down to plan your next reading lesson, what are the absolute most important things to remember? Let's do a quick recap.
If you only take away 3 things, make it these 3 pillars. First, vocabulary knowledge is the foundation for everything. Second, great reading lessons don't just happen. They need careful staging. And third, the PWP framework gives you a reliable structure to build on every single time. Get these right and your students will thank you.
And really, those core ideas are the engine that drives powerful, effective language reading instruction.
So, I'll leave you with a question to think about. With all this in mind, how could you tweak your next reading lesson? Could you spend a little more time on that pre-reading stage, really digging into vocabulary? Could you add a more explicit focus on a specific reading strategy? The goal is to make every time your students read a real opportunity for learning. Thanks so much for joining me.